I remember sitting in that meeting, and in my boredom, beginning to contemplate where my choices had led me. Now, don't get me wrong, my life was good, my money was good, my health was good, but I wasn't good. And in these types of moments, it's almost as if time stands still. You begin to rewind and watch your life as though it's a movie. Only it's not a movie, it's reality. But that's good news also because it means that the ending hasn't been written yet. And so as I sat there, I realized I was going to have to make some life-altering decisions. You know, psychologists have noted that people love to have many options. People feel that the more options they have, the better the chances are of finding the choice that will perfectly satisfy their needs. Svetlana Whitener of Enlight Coaching writes that people tend to think that the word choice and decision are just synonyms for the same thing, when actually there's a difference between the two. And psychological investigations let us know that the difference stems in the concept of freedom and determinism, where freedom is the place of choice and determinism the place of decision. For example, you might choose to have pizza or tacos for dinner tonight, but you decide who to marry. In fact, as I was dating my girlfriend and it came time for me to contemplate marriage, and I got around to asking her, in a momentary lapse of judgment, she decided to say yes. What is a verdict? A verdict is a decision. Choices can be undone, but decisions are more final. Let's delve a little deeper into this word decide. When you think of the word decide, the suffix side, C-I-D-E, means to kill. This is why we have words like homicide, genocide, pesticide. Because when you make a decision in your mind, you have effectively killed off all other options. So often in life, we make impulsive decisions that hinder our life's journey. We effectively place limits on ourselves. Before I got the job, I, like many of us, knew that I was going to have to make certain choices. I needed to choose a college to attend and choose a major, choose a club to belong to. But in the course of speaking to high schools and universities and youth groups, I talked to so many young people who are trying to make lifelong decisions when they're barely able to make wise choices. So perhaps there's a change in the mindset that needs to take place because you limit yourself not by your choices but by your decisions. You see, we like to know that there's a redo possible if necessary. We don't want to place limits on our future or on our success. We have a vision in mind for our lives. We have a purpose we're trying to fulfill. So it behooves us to only make wise choices until the time comes where we absolutely must make a decision. The brilliant writer Joseph Campbell said, "Find your bliss, don't be afraid, and doors will begin to open for you where you didn't even know they were going to be." However, I found that the opposite is often true. I've learned to ask myself some very intentional questions that fly in direct contradiction to how we've typically been taught to think. In the end, it may not be that your bliss is the best guide to follow. So, before you make a life decision, ask yourself, what do I hate? Now, I know that sounds like horrible advice, so let me explain. I remember being at the gym and I heard two guys talking and one asked the other one about his new job. And he responded, "It's great, it's good money, I kind of sit there all day, I don't have to do much." That was it. And that may not sound shocking to many people listening, but for me, it made me cringe. Because I hate when people are living aimless, purposeless lives. I believe that a purpose-led lifestyle will prevent passionless living. So often, we've been told, find what you love, figure out what you love, give it all you've got, find your bliss. But it may not be in finding your bliss that you uncover your destiny. You know, if no one ever hated uncomfortable shoes, comfortable shoes would not exist. If no one ever hated hand-washing clothes, the washing machine probably wouldn't have been invented. If no one ever hated watching commercials like I do, we probably wouldn't have the DVR. My mom was right in telling me not to say that I hate someone. But this type of hatred is different. This is simply about being observant about things that are contrary to your nature. I remember sitting in the meeting and beginning to think about what I hated besides being in the meeting, and realizing that in answering this question, I might uncover the treasure I was looking for. For example, if you hate that there's so many young men that seem to have no role model, you might choose to investigate what skills are necessary to be impactful in that arena. Choose to connect with certain people who are already doing that work. Choose to educate yourself in that area of influence. And you might then decide how best to implement those choices. It might be by starting a nonprofit or fundraising or teaching or coaching or something of that nature. In fact, I have a friend. He's a homicide detective in Chicago. And he hated seeing young men of color become the victims and perpetrators of violence. Now, he had already chosen to become a police officer. He had even chosen to be a coach in the past. I had chosen to serve with him for years, impacting the lives of teenagers. But then one night, he chose to intervene on a playground where he saw a young boy, for lack of a better term, acting a fool, acting crazy, about 9 years old. And he was screaming and he was cursing out people twice his age. Another kid on the playground dropped their phone, and this kid ran over and jumped on the phone trying to break it. And my police officer friend saw how this situation might end up. But he also realized something else. He also realized that the solution needed to be implemented at an age much younger than teenager. So he decided to start a nonprofit, walking life on life with young boys starting at age 9 through their high school career. Listen, you might love who you help, but you might hate the reason society has put them in a position to need your help in the first place. Before you make a life decision, ask yourself, what frustrates me in life? Usually, whatever frustrates you is what you were born to solve. But let me clarify this very quickly, because if bad drivers frustrate you, that does not mean that your life's goal should be to gather all the bad drivers and ship them to some far-off island, although you might want to do that. No, what I'm talking about is when you're watching the news, when you're scrolling through the timeline on your phone, and there's a situation that frustrates you and does so repeatedly. But not only that, when you see it, you say, man, if they just did this and this and combined those, that would probably fix the problem and save money. When you can see the problem and see the solution and see that it has not yet been attempted, therein might lie your destiny. It frustrates me to see people living without purpose. It frustrates me to see unexerted potential. It frustrates me to hear people talk about problems and solutions, yet to see nothing come to pass. Leadership expert Dr. Miles Monroe said, "Don't die because you're old. Die because you're empty." Die because you've given all you can possibly give to trying to be the solution to some problem. And in so doing, choose to figure out what skills are necessary to attack your area of frustration. Choose to educate yourself. Choose to connect with people who can help you be impactful in that area. And listen, these choices might take you in a completely different direction than what you once thought, to completely different platforms. But here's the thing. In life, people are most often known for one of two things: either the problems they create or the problems they solve. Be the solution to somebody's problem and watch your life turn from average to exceptional. And finally, decide how these choices will direct the next 30 or 40 years of your life. And lastly, before you make a life decision, ask yourself, who am I jealous of? Once again, I know that sounds like horrible advice, so let me clarify. Jealousy is often one side of a two-sided coin. The other side is desire. Jealousy is purpose in disguise. Think very quickly of someone you've been jealous of in the past. Now, I don't mean the person that stole your boyfriend or girlfriend from you in high school. I don't even mean a famous athlete like LeBron James. If you don't have the necessary talent to be in the NBA, there's no sense in being jealous of him in any purposeful way. No, what I mean is, has there ever been an artist, a painter, someone you wanted to emulate, someone that you wished you could do what they do? Or has there ever been an author that every time you read their writings, every time you read their work, you're inspired and you're like, man, I want to be able to impact people like that. I want to be able to influence people in that way. Or has there ever been a speaker and you're like, every time you listen to this person, you're like, man, this guy is awesome. I want to be able to motivate people like that. I want to be able to influence people like that. You see, there's a purpose in you waiting to be birthed, but instead of birthing yours, you've been watching someone else birth and raise his or hers. But this is a clue. You aren't jealous of everyone. You're only jealous of certain people that are doing something in line with the purpose and desire that lives in you. But don't let jealousy take you so far that it makes you want to be that person. See, purpose eliminates competition. But instead, allow that jealousy to be your guide, a guide to force you to ask the right questions, to make the right choices. Choose to figure out what skills are necessary, what skills you saw in that person you're jealous of that you can begin to grow in. Choose, if at all possible, to learn directly from them. Choose to figure out what education or other learning you might need to do to be effective in that same way. And finally, decide to relentlessly pursue the purpose that was awakened in you when you watched this person you're jealous of. And then you will also watch that jealousy turn into passion for life. Now let's return to that meeting where I began to contemplate my choices, where I began to examine my frustration. I hated seeing people drift aimlessly through life, knowing that I had within me the tools and knowledge to help them live with purpose. But I also realized I wasn't frustrated with the job. I was frustrated with feeling like I was leaving something on the table. Maybe you can relate. I was frustrated with feeling like I had so much to give, but I couldn't give it in that environment. And I had already begun to listen incessantly to some very powerful people who I saw impacting millions of others, and began to get jealous of the fact that they were getting to do what I felt I could do also. One such person was Dr. Miles Monroe. And he said, you have to decide if you're going to rob the world or bless it with the rich, valuable, potent, untapped resources locked away within you. So I made a decision to relentlessly pursue the purpose that was now awakened in me, which is to help other people make and live out purposeful decisions. Making wise choices might protect your present, but making bad decisions might kill your future. As long as you have choices, you have options, but decisions make things final. So don't decide until you've asked yourself these questions that will enable you to discover the purpose for which you were created to live. Thank you. Thank you.